Husband kicked out his wife after she was crippled for mistress, unaware of her $100 million fortune. When tragedy struck, Amelia Cole thought love would hold her steady, but instead of a husband's embrace, she found herself shoved out of her own home, crippled and heartbroken, as Jason Cole chose another woman over her broken body. "Get out, Amelia. I won't chain my future to a woman who can't even stand. Sabrina is my life now. You are nothing to me," Jason snarled, slamming the gate while the mistress looked on with a cruel smile. Neighbors whispered, phones recorded. A wife once cherished was discarded like trash. Jason believed he had freed himself from weakness. He thought the world would clap for his decisiveness. But what he never knew was that the very moment he kicked Amelia out, a silent door opened to a hidden $100 million fortune, and the woman he mocked as useless would rise with a strength no one could shatter. This is not just betrayal, it is the story of a wife humiliated in her darkest hour, yet reborn with dignity, justice, and power that would leave her betrayer on his knees. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. Her story deserves to be heard. Don't let Amelia's voice fade into silence. Subscribe now and share in the comments where you're watching from. So Amelia knows the world is standing with her. The rain came down in sheets, drumming against the windshield like 1,000 fists. Amelia Cole gripped the steering wheel with trembling hands as headlights from a massive truck bore down on her. Tires screeched, metal howled, and in one violent second, her car spun across the highway. The world shattered into sparks, screams, and crushing silence. When her eyes opened again, blinding white lights stabbed at her vision. She tried to sit up, but agony bolted through her legs, locking her to the hospital bed. Machines beeped in harsh rhythm. A brace clamped tightly around her knee. She couldn't feel the weight of her own body. Dr. Thomas Hayes, a tall man with a steady gaze, stood beside her. His voice was calm but heavy with truth. "Amelia, you survived something most people wouldn't, but your legs suffered serious trauma. You'll need braces, therapy, maybe even a chair for the rest of your life. There will be progress, yes, but not miracles." The words cut deeper than the crash. Amelia's throat closed. Her dreams of dancing in her kitchen, of running with her children one day, gone. She sobbed quietly, clutching the stiff brace as if it were proof her body had betrayed her. But not everyone in the room was mourning. Jason Cole, her husband, stood at the far corner with arms crossed. Instead of rushing to hold her, his eyes slid to the chart of medical bills Dr. Hayes had left on the counter. Months of treatment, hundreds of thousands in cost. His jaw tightened, not in grief, but in calculation. Outside the ward, Jason's mother, Marion Cole, whispered sharp words. "She's broken, Jason. Look at her. You're still young. Don't ruin your future chained to a cripple. People will understand if you move on. Think of your business, your image." Jason hesitated, torn between the vows he had made and the whispers of ambition that had always driven him. Then another figure entered, sleek, confident, with eyes that lingered too long on Jason. Sabrina Knox, the polished investor liaison, set a folder on the chair. "Jason," she said smoothly, "investors want leaders who make tough choices, men who don't let weakness drag them down. This is your chance to step forward." Her perfume lingered in the sterile air, her hand brushing Jason's arm as she spoke. And when her eyes shifted toward Amelia, pale, fragile, asleep, Sabrina's lips curved into a knowing smile. Amelia stirred weakly, whispering her husband's name in her sleep. Her fingers reached blindly across the sheets, searching for the man who was already slipping away. Jason stared at her, chest rising with a breath that felt heavier than the storm outside. He knew what his mother wanted. He knew what Sabrina promised. And deep down, a dangerous thought began to form. Amelia isn't my partner anymore. She's my obstacle. Jason stepped back into the ward. His wife's weak eyes fluttered open, searching for comfort. He forced a smile, but behind it his mind was already choosing between loyalty and ambition. His next words would not heal her. They would decide her fate. Outside, Marion's voice carried through the hall. "We'll need to discuss what happens when she comes home." The front door slammed so hard the walls trembled. Amelia's wheelchair jolted as Jason Cole shoved it inside without care. Rain still dripped from her hair, and the brace on her legs squeaked against the tile. She had dreamed of this moment, coming home, safe in her husband's arms. Instead, she entered a house colder than the hospital ward she had just left. Marion Cole, Jason's mother, swept into the living room with arms folded tight across her chest, her lips curled like the edge of a blade. "She can't even stand without help," Marion snapped. "How do you expect to run your business with this burden dragging you down?" Amelia flinched. She had always tried to win Marion's approval, cooking meals, hosting family gatherings, smiling even when her back ached. Now in her most fragile hour, Marion's words pierced like spears. Jason set Amelia's duffel bag down with a thud, not bothering to meet her eyes. "Mother's right," he muttered. "Clients see everything. Investors will start doubting me if they think I'm chained to weakness." Amelia's voice trembled. "Jason, I'm still me. I'm still your wife." She tried to reach for his hand, but he pulled away as though her touch burned. The silence that followed was broken by the sound of heels clicking across the marble floor. Sabrina Knox appeared in the doorway, elegance dripping from every gesture. Her red dress glowed against the cold walls, her smile sharp and practiced. She carried a folder marked Investor Partnerships. Placing it on the table, she spoke as if Amelia didn't even exist. "Jason, the board is looking for expansion. They want assurance you're focused, decisive, strong. Investors respect a man who knows when to cut loose the things that hold him back." Her eyes slid briefly toward Amelia, then back to Jason. The meaning was clear. Amelia's chest tightened. She turned toward Jason, desperate. "Jason, I need you, please. Don't let them make you see me as less than I am." Jason's jaw clenched. His silence said more than words could. He was weighing his pride, his contracts, his image, against the woman who had once carried his dreams with her whole heart. Marion broke the silence with a clap of her hands. "Enough pity. What this house needs is a new chapter. Jason, you can't rebuild your empire with her weighing you down. Look at Sabrina. She's capable, connected. You know what must be done." The room felt like ice pressing against Amelia's skin. The people she thought were family no longer looked at her with love. They saw her as cargo, as debt, as shame. She tried to speak, but Jason cut her off with words colder than the rain outside. "Stop pretending, Amelia. You're not my partner anymore. You're my liability." Her world spun. Not even the crash had hurt this much. Jason's hand closed around the folder Sabrina had placed on the table. He didn't look at his wife. He only nodded once, as if sealing a deal in his heart. Amelia's breath caught. She could already sense what was coming. From outside, the faint hum of phones recording at the gate hinted at the storm waiting in the driveway, a storm that would soon swallow Amelia whole. The golden sun dipped low, painting the driveway in burning orange. Neighbors gathered in quiet clusters, phones raised, screens glowing. The air was heavy with whispers and curiosity. At the center of it all, Amelia Cole sat in her wheelchair, her duffel bag on her lap, trembling as she begged her husband to stop. "Jason, please." "Not here," she whispered, her voice cracking. "We can talk inside. Don't do this in front of them." But Jason Cole was already shouting, his voice booming through the estate gate like a judge delivering a final sentence. He jabbed his finger at her chest, his arm fully extended, his face twisted with rage. "You're holding me back. Do you hear me? You are nothing but a burden. I will not waste my life chained to a cripple." The crowd gasped. Some laughed nervously, others shook their heads. Phones tilted higher. Every cruel word was being captured for the world to see. Beside Jason, Marion Cole clapped her hands once, smiling as though the scene were a performance she had scripted herself. "That's my son. Strong, decisive," she announced proudly. And standing just behind him, Sabrina Knox leaned casually against the polished gate, her red dress glowing in the sunlight. She smirked at Amelia, tilting her head in mock pity. "Don't fight it, Amelia. Men like Jason deserve partners who can keep up. And you, well, you can barely stand." Amelia's heart fractured. She wanted to scream, but the words lodged in her throat. The neighbor's eyes pressed on her like stones. Her dignity, her marriage, her life. It was all being stripped in public view. She reached for Jason's arm one last time, her fingers trembling. "Jason, I'm your wife. I stood by you when you had nothing. Please don't throw me away like this. For a split second, his eyes softened, memories of their early years flickering in his mind. But then Sabrina's hand slid around his elbow, reminding him of the wealth and promise she dangled before him. Jason yanked his arm away, his face hardening. "You're finished, Amelia," he spat. "Take your pity and your useless legs somewhere else. This house is not your home anymore." With one swift motion, he shoved her duffel bag onto the gravel at her feet. The zipper burst open, spilling her clothes, photographs, and the brace cleaning kit onto the dirt. Neighbors gasped louder. Phones zoomed in. Amelia bent forward, tears streaking down her face as she scrambled to gather her belongings. Her fingers shook too much to close the zipper. A childhood photo slipped away, landing at Sabrina's heel. Sabrina bent slowly, picked it up, and handed it back with a cruel smile. "Keep your memories, dear. It's all you've got left." Amelia's world spun. The gate behind Jason slammed shut with finality, the clang echoing like a death knell. She sat on the ground beside her open duffel, clutching her titanium brace as neighbors whispered, "Did you see that? He really threw her out." The humiliation was complete. The woman who once carried Jason's dreams was discarded like trash, her shame captured on every screen. As Amelia sobbed quietly, headlights swept across the street. A car slowed to a stop. A man stepped out, silhouetted against the last rays of daylight. His name was Felix Turner, a rideshare driver whose small act of mercy was about to change the course of Amelia's story. In the distance, laughter echoed from the house as Jason and Sabrina toasted their new chapter. But Amelia's true chapter was only beginning. The street was alive with cruel whispers. Phone screens glowed as neighbors uploaded clips of Amelia Cole being cast out. Some laughed, some jeered, others simply turned away. She sat on the gravel, her duffel bag torn open beside her, sobbing as the golden sun bled into night. Suddenly, headlights cut through the darkness. A sedan slowed, then stopped in front of her. The driver's door creaked open, and out stepped a tall young man in a rideshare jacket, his face lit with concern. "Ma'am, are you all right?" His voice was steady, kind, not filled with pity, but with urgency. His name was Felix Turner, a rideshare driver working late to pay his college loans. Amelia tried to answer, but her words drowned in sobs. Felix looked around at the murmuring crowd, anger flashing in his eyes. "What's wrong with you people? Can't you see she needs help?" he shouted. The neighbors lowered their phones, ashamed. Felix knelt, gently gathering Amelia's scattered clothes back into her bag. "I don't know what happened to you," he said softly, "but I'm not leaving you here." For the first time since the crash, Amelia felt a sliver of warmth. She nodded weakly, clutching the brace at her knee as if it were her last anchor. Felix lifted her carefully into the back seat of his car. The moment his door shut, Amelia's phone buzzed with notifications. Clips of her humiliation were already circulating online. Neighbors had posted everything. She saw herself crying, Jason pointing, Sabrina smirking. The comments stung like daggers. "Dead weight. Pathetic. Good riddance." Her chest ached with shame, but Felix's voice broke the spiral. "Don't read that. You're not what they say. People like that. They don't know your story." The car rolled slowly through the quiet neighborhood. Amelia clutched her duffel, staring out at the houses she once greeted with smiles. Now they were walls of judgment. When they stopped, it wasn't at a shelter or hospital. Felix had taken her to a small rundown apartment building on the city's edge. The landlady, Nora Pike, appeared at the door, a stern woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and folded arms. "Felix, what are you bringing me now?" Nora grumbled. She ran the building and had no patience for sob stories. Felix explained quickly, his voice firm. "She's been kicked out. She needs a room. Just for tonight. I'll cover the first payment." Nora eyed Amelia skeptically, then sighed. "Fine, but if she causes trouble, she's out." Amelia lowered her head, humiliation washing over her again. She had gone from being a wife in a grand estate to a crippled woman begging for space in a stranger's tiny building. That night, in the dim, peeling room Nora grudgingly gave her, Amelia curled on the bed, silent tears soaking her pillow. She thought of Jason's words, of Marion's claps, of Sabrina's smile. It felt like the crash had killed her twice, once on the road, and now at her husband's hands. But in the shadows of despair, Felix's quiet voice lingered in her mind. "I'm not leaving you here." Just before she drifted into restless sleep, a knock sounded at the door. It wasn't Felix. It was a young woman with law books in her arms. Chloe Adams, a law intern Nora often rented to. She had overheard Felix's story and carried a different kind of mercy in her hands. Chloe's arrival would soon spark the paperwork that changed everything. A trust, a fortune, a chance at dignity Amelia never saw coming. The scream tore from Amelia's throat before she could stop it. Her hands gripped the parallel bars so tight her knuckles went white. Sweat rolled down her face as her weakened legs trembled beneath the weight of the titanium brace. Every nerve in her body begged her to sit, to give up, to surrender. "Stand tall, Amelia," barked Ryan Matthews, the tough love physical therapist assigned to her case. He was broad-shouldered, his voice sharp, but his eyes hid a spark of compassion. "I don't care how much it hurts. Pain means the muscles are waking up. Again, move!" Amelia cried out, dragging one leg forward, the brace clanging against the floor. She stumbled, nearly collapsing, but Ryan's hands caught her at the last second. He set her upright again without pity. "You fall, you rise. That's how this works. You want independence? Earn it." Her body shook, but deep inside, something stubborn burned. She clenched her teeth and forced herself to take another step. Her arms shook against the bars, her chest heaved, and tears blurred her vision. Yet when she looked up, she saw Felix at the corner of the room, nodding encouragement. He had driven her to every session, waiting patiently without complaint, and beside him sat Chloe Adams, the young law intern with big eyes and a notebook always in her hand. She had been the first to bring Amelia soup in Nora's apartment, the first to smile without judgment. Now she leaned forward, her voice warm. "You're stronger than you think, Amelia. Every paper I draft, every form I file, I'll remind you of this moment, because you're not just surviving, you're fighting." The words filled Amelia with unexpected strength. She gripped the bars tighter and dragged her other leg forward. Ryan's voice thundered again, but this time there was pride in it. "That's it. That's grit. That's the woman who refuses to stay down." Minutes later, Amelia collapsed into her chair, drained, every muscle screaming. But when she looked at Chloe, Felix, and Ryan, she felt something she hadn't in weeks. Hope. The kind of hope that whispered maybe her story wasn't over. That night, Chloe placed a neat stack of papers before Amelia in Nora's kitchen. Evelyn Hart, the estate lawyer, had sent them. Evelyn was the executor of Amelia's late godmother, Aunt Lillian Hart's estate, a woman Amelia had barely spoken to in years. "Amelia," Chloe said softly, "these are power of attorney forms. Evelyn says you should sign them." She hinted, "Something bigger is waiting." "But only if you trust her." Amelia's hand trembled as she signed. She didn't know what Evelyn planned, but the firm tone in her letter gave Amelia a strange peace. Maybe there was more to her story than humiliation and pain. Just as Amelia set down the pen, Chloe's phone buzzed with a message. She read it, eyes widening, then looked at Amelia. "Your godmother left more than just memories. Evelyn says, it's time to open the sealed letter." That letter would soon reveal the trigger clause, a fortune hidden in plain sight, waiting for the moment of betrayal. The room went silent as Evelyn Hart, escorner, unfolded the heavy envelope sealed with wax. Her presence carried authority, the kind of woman who measured every word with precision. She laid the letter on Nora's kitchen table, the sound of the parchment against wood echoing like a gavel. "Amelia," Evelyn said firmly, sliding the document across, "this was left by your godmother, Lillian Hart, before her passing. It was never to be opened until a condition was met, and last week, that condition was triggered." Amelia's heart pounded. "Triggered? What do you mean?" Evelyn's eyes sharpened. "Your godmother was a woman of foresight. She feared your marriage might collapse if tragedy struck. So she created a conditional trust. The trigger was simple. If your husband abandoned you in your hour of disability, the trust would activate." She paused, letting the words settle. Then she tapped the letter. "Jason Cole threw you out. In that moment, Amelia, $100 million trust became yours." The words struck like thunder. Felix nearly dropped his keys. Chloe gasped, her notebook falling to the floor. Nora, who had been listening from the doorway, leaned in closer, disbelief written across her face. Amelia's eyes blurred with tears. 100 million? That can't be real. Why would Aunt Lillian? Evelyn's voice softened, though her tone stayed firm. She loved you from afar. She saw how you gave yourself to Jason, even as his ambition overshadowed your life. She wanted protection in case the worst happened. That time has come. The trust is sealed, ironclad, beyond Jason's reach. Amelia shook her head, her hands trembling as she gripped the titanium brace on her leg. But I'm broken. What good is fortune if I can't even walk without pain? Chloe leaned forward, her eyes shining. It's not about what you've lost, Amelia. It's about what you can build. Think of every woman cast aside, every patient who can't afford therapy. You can change lives with this, Felix added gently. And maybe change your own story too. Evelyn spread out additional papers, medical reports, phone footage of Jason's public outburst, testimonies that Amelia had been discarded in full view of the community. Every piece of evidence proves abandonment. Chloe has already filed preliminary documents. The law stands with you. Amelia's tears fell harder, but not from despair. For the first time since the crash, she felt power stirring within her, a power Jason could never take back. She had been humiliated, yes, but now she held the weapon of dignity, wealth, and justice. Evelyn's final words cut the air like steel. From this day forward, Jason Cole has no legal claim over you or this fortune. What he cast aside in cruelty, the law has now sealed in your favor. You are free. Amelia closed her eyes, whispering, "Thank you, Aunt Lillian." The woman who once felt like a ghost in her life had become the architect of her freedom. Just as relief filled the room, Evelyn's phone buzzed with an urgent message. She glanced at it, her face tightening. We don't have much time. If Jason finds out what's been triggered, he'll try to claw back control through deception. We need to move fast before he makes his next move. Jason's pride would soon drive him into dangerous financial risks, weaving him deeper into the web that would eventually trap him. The gavel slammed down in the private court chamber. Motion granted, Judge Rebecca Wallace declared, her voice sharp as steel. In one sweep of legal authority, every account tied to the newly activated trust was sealed behind iron walls of law. Jason Cole would never see a dime. Evelyn Hart, Esquires, stood tall in her dark suit, her eyes locked forward. She had just orchestrated the first step of a legal fortress, one that Jason could never break. Around her, clerks scribbled furiously, stamping documents and filing injunctions. Every page was a stone in Amelia's shield. Back in Nora's modest kitchen, Amelia sat wide-eyed as Evelyn spread out the files. Chloe hovered close, taking notes, while Felix leaned against the counter, silent but steady. Evelyn's voice was measured, deliberate. I've structured a layered trust. Shell companies, clean boards, charitable fronts. Every route Jason might use to reclaim control has been blocked. If he tries to sue, he'll hit a wall. If he tries to manipulate the courts, Judge Wallace already has her gavel ready. Amelia traced her finger over the polished surface of her titanium brace. So, this money, this future, it's safe? He can't touch it? Evelyn's eyes softened briefly. Amelia, not only is it safe, it is yours to command. But it must be used wisely. Power attracts wolves. We will stay silent until the time is right. Chloe leaned in eagerly, and when the time comes, we'll show the world who Amelia really is. Not Jason's cast-off, but a leader. Amelia swallowed, her heart trembling between fear and hope. I never wanted revenge, but I can't let him keep destroying me. I have to rise, not just for myself, but for others like me. Felix smiled faintly from the corner. That's the Amelia I see, the one who refuses to stay down. Days turned into weeks. Behind the scenes, Evelyn built what she called the Amelia Mobility Foundation, a shell at first, but soon to become a fortress of compassion. Bank accounts were moved, lawyers signed off, anonymous donations began trickling to rehab centers and clinics. Amelia's name was never attached, but her fingerprints were everywhere. Meanwhile, Jason strutted publicly with Sabrina on his arm, boasting of new deals, and investor promises. Social media cheered his decisiveness, but Evelyn knew the cracks were already forming. One evening, Amelia rolled into the foundation's small rented office for the first time. The room was bare, only a desk and a lamp. Yet to her, it felt like the seed of something greater. She placed her brace on the desk and whispered, "This is not just my armor anymore. It's a banner." Evelyn looked at her with rare emotion. "You've been given the tools, Amelia. Now together, we'll decide how to wield them. The fortress is secure, but the world doesn't know what's coming." At that very moment, across town, Jason stood before a room full of investors, holding Sabrina's hand aloft. "We are stronger than ever," he declared. Cameras flashed, applause thundered. Yet in the shadows, Damian Wolf, his calculating rival, smirked quietly. The first domino of Jason's empire was about to fall. Damian's interest in Sabrina was not romance, it was strategy. And soon, Sabrina's double game would tighten the web around Jason's crumbling pride. The crash echoed in the therapy hall. Amelia Cole had fallen flat from her wheelchair during a curb practice. Gasps filled the room as she hit the ground hard, her brace scraping against the concrete. Pain surged through her body, white-hot and merciless. For a split second, she wanted to scream, "Enough! I can't do this!" But before despair could swallow her, Ryan Matthews, the relentless physical therapist, crouched beside her. His voice cut through the panic like a blade. "Don't just lie there, Amelia. Look at me. You are not broken. You're in training. Now breathe and let's get you back up." Felix rushed forward, worry written all over his face, but Ryan lifted a hand. "Let her fight this one." Amelia's arms trembled as she pressed against the chair frame. Sweat drenched her face. Her muscles screamed, but she clenched her teeth and pushed. Inch by inch, she hauled herself upright until she was seated again, chest heaving, tears running freely. Ryan nodded firmly. "That's what I'm talking about. You didn't stay down. And tomorrow you'll do more than just get back up. You'll move forward." From that day, every session became a war. Ryan drilled her on chair transfers, ramps, curbs, and doors. At first, Amelia failed more than she succeeded. She rolled backward on ramps. Her hands blistered on wheels. Her brace felt like a cruel shackle. But every time she faltered, she remembered Jason's words. "You're my liability." That memory burned hotter than pain, and slowly, step by step, skill replaced fear. Dr. Thomas Hayes, the orthopedic surgeon, checked in often. He reminded her, "Progress is slow, Amelia, but these milestones are proof you're regaining agency. You don't need miracles, you need persistence." Meanwhile, Chloe recorded small clips of Amelia's training, not for the world yet, but for Amelia herself. "So you can see how far you've come," she said. Late at night, Amelia watched those clips and wept, sometimes from pain, sometimes from pride. Then came the day Ryan called the 12 steps. It wasn't about climbing a staircase. It was about taking 12 consecutive assisted steps with her brace. The hall went silent as Amelia gripped the bars, legs trembling. Felix whispered, "You got this." Chloe pressed record. Dr. Hayes stood watch, arms folded, eyes steady. "1," she gasped, dragging her leg forward. "2," Ryan urged. By 7, sweat blinded her eyes. By 10, she thought she would collapse. But something inside pushed her harder. "I will not be dead weight. I will not be discarded." At 12, she cried out loud, not in pain but in triumph. She had done it. For the first time since the crash, Amelia felt alive again. The titanium brace that once felt like a prison now gleamed like a badge of war. She touched it gently, whispering, "You're not my enemy anymore. You're my ally." Everyone clapped. Even Ryan's stern face cracked into a proud grin. "Remember this day, Amelia, the day you stopped surviving and started living again." That night, Amelia sat by her window, voice noting her journey. "One day I'll share this with women who think they can't rise." But her recording was cut short by a breaking news flash on her phone. Jason Cole, smiling beside Sabrina, had just announced a bold new deal at a glittering vendor summit. His peacocking would not last, because hidden beneath the applause were the cracks of a financial storm waiting to break. The ballroom erupted in thunderous applause. Spotlights swept across the stage where Jason Cole strutted in a crisp navy suit, his arm locked proudly with Sabrina Knox. Glasses clinked, cameras flashed, and Jason lifted the microphone with a smirk that oozed triumph. "Ladies and gentlemen," he declared, his voice booming, "tonight marks a new chapter. My company is not just surviving, it's dominating. With Sabrina by my side, we've secured investors who believe in strength, in vision, in decisiveness. Together, we will build an empire." The crowd roared. Sabrina leaned in and kissed his cheek, her smile glittering under the chandeliers. Marion, sitting front row, clapped until her palms turned red. To the audience, Jason looked unstoppable. But behind the polished speech, his empire was crumbling. Lewis Grant, Jason's weary CFO, stood in the shadows at the back of the hall, flipping nervously through his phone. He had spent weeks patching books, hiding liabilities, and juggling debts to cover Jason's reckless spending. He knew the truth. Jason was living on borrowed time, and not far from him, sipping champagne with calculated calm, sat Damian Wolf, Jason's sharpest rival. His eyes never left Sabrina. To Damian, Jason's public display was not impressive. It was predictable, and predictable men were easy to destroy. Meanwhile, on a small TV in Nora's apartment, Amelia and Chloe watched the broadcast. Amelia's chest tightened as Jason boasted, Sabrina beamed, and Marion clapped. The same trio who had thrown her to the street now paraded themselves as a picture of power. Chloe frowned. "He's using your pain as his proof of strength. The world claps for him because they don't know the truth." Amelia touched her titanium brace, whispering, "They will. One day they'll see who he really is." At the gala, Jason basked in his own glory. He shook hands, promised returns, signed risky deals with investors who barely checked his paperwork. Every nod of approval fed his pride. He never noticed Lewis's pale face or Damian's quiet smirk. Later, Marion pulled him aside, her voice sharp with pride. "You've done well, son. The community sees you as decisive. Amelia's gone, and no one pities you. This is your moment to remarry, to expand." Jason puffed out his chest, believing every word. Sabrina whispered sweet promises in his ear, reminding him of the investors waiting with deep pockets. He believed her lies because they echoed his desires. But while Jason signed contracts under the chandeliers, Damian's men were already moving behind the scenes. Stocks were being shorted. Shell companies linked to Sabrina's partners were waiting to collapse his balance sheets. Jason was digging his own grave, one signature at a time. As the applause thundered, Sabrina leaned close, her lips brushing Jason's ear. "You're untouchable now," she whispered. Jason grinned, oblivious. Across the room, Damian raised his glass to Sabrina, their eyes locking in a silent pact Jason never saw. The ballroom's after-party was chaos. Laughter spilled, glasses overflowed, and Sabrina Knox commanded the center like a queen. She twirled in her glittering red gown, letting the spotlight kiss every angle. Men and women swarmed, praising her style, her confidence. But not everyone admired. Gloria Daniels, a rival socialite with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue, stepped forward. She smirked as she tapped Sabrina's shoulder. "Lovely dress," Gloria said sweetly, her tone dripping with poison. "Funny, though. I saw the exact same gown at last season's auction. Secondhand, wasn't it? Borrowed again?" The crowd hushed, eyes flicking between the two women. Sabrina's smile faltered for the briefest moment before she laughed it off. "Not everyone can recognize timeless fashion, Gloria." But Gloria's smirk lingered. Seeds of doubt had been planted. At the same time, in a dim office away from the party, Paige Whitman, a forensic accountant, pieced together a different puzzle. Her screen glowed with numbers. Vendor fraud, shell invoices, payments routed through companies tied to Sabrina. Each link pulled her closer to the truth. Sabrina was no loyal partner to Jason. She was funneling intel directly to Damian Wolf, his rival. Back at Nora's small apartment, Amelia sat beside Chloe, watching the online buzz. Clips of Jason and Sabrina's gala triumph flooded the internet, but tucked in the comments were whispers of oddities, missing invoices, lavish expenses, mismatched jewelry. Chloe's eyes narrowed. The cracks are showing. They think they're untouchable, but the numbers don't lie. Amelia rubbed the polished surface of her titanium brace. Sabrina wears Jason's pride like a crown, but crowns can fall. Meanwhile, Jason was oblivious. He drank deeply, laughing with investors, never noticing how Damien's men circulated through the room, quietly spreading doubts, snapping photos, sending messages. Sabrina leaned into Jason, brushing her lips across his ear. "Don't worry about anything. Damien says this deal will secure everything." Jason blinked. "Damien? What does he have to do with this?" Sabrina quickly masked her slip with a laugh. "Oh, I only meant his competitors envy you. Don't think too much about it." Jason, drunk on pride, shrugged it off. But Lewis, his CFO, overheard. His stomach tightened. He knew exactly what that meant. The noose was tightening. Later that night, Nora, from her apartment balcony, saw Jason creeping into the street below. He looked around nervously before knocking on a door. Nora leaned forward, phone in hand. It was Amelia's building. Jason's voice carried through the hall. "Amelia, I still care. Maybe we can talk. Just a small transfer, enough to ease the company's strain. You know I wouldn't ask if I didn't love you." Nora's recording light blinked red. Every word slipped into her phone like a dagger waiting for the right moment to strike. As Jason whispered through the door, Amelia stayed silent, frozen in her chair. From the shadows, Evelyn stepped forward with papers in hand, a recorder in one, a restraining order in the other. She would not let Jason exploit Amelia again. The pity visit was just the beginning. Soon Jason's empire would face its first true breach, an audit that no lie could cover. The pounding on the apartment door shook the thin walls. Amelia Cole froze in her wheelchair, her breath catching in her throat. She knew that knock. It was desperate, insistent, and full of false urgency. "Amelia, it's me. Jason," came the voice she hadn't heard in weeks. It was no longer the booming tone of a triumphant man. It was cracked, pleading, dipped in a syrup of desperation. Before she could respond, the door swung open. Jason stepped inside uninvited. His expensive suit hung loose on his shoulders, his tie crooked, his face pale. His eyes darted nervously, scanning the shabby room like he was choking on its poverty. "I still care about you," he began, crouching beside her chair. His voice quivered in a rehearsed tremble. "I've made mistakes, Amelia, but you know me. We shared a life. I just need a little help. A small transfer. Just enough to keep the company afloat. For us." Amelia stared at him, her lips trembling, her heart pulling in two directions. This was the man she had once loved, the man she once built her world around. Part of her wanted to believe him, but another part remembered the driveway, the pointing finger, the words that crushed her. "You're my liability." Her silence stretched long, and Jason took it as weakness. He leaned closer, his voice dropping into urgency. "Don't let those lawyers poison you against me. Sabrina, she's nothing compared to you. I made a mistake, but if you help me now, I can fix everything." From the shadows of the small kitchen, Evelyn Hart stepped forward. She had been waiting, knowing Jason's pride would lead him here. In her hand was a sleek recorder, its red light blinking. Every word he spoke was captured, evidence of manipulation and financial exploitation. "Amelia doesn't owe you anything, Mr. Cole," Evelyn said coldly. "You abandoned her in public. You mocked her in her weakest hour, and now you dare to beg for her fortune?" Jason flinched, anger rising to cover his shame. "This is between me and my wife." "No," Evelyn snapped. "This is between you and the law. And let me remind you, you're not her husband anymore. You're a predator knocking on the door of a woman you threw away." Jason's face darkened. He turned back to Amelia, trying one last tactic. "Amelia, I'm begging, please, for old time's sake. Just a little help." Amelia's chest heaved, her fingers clutching her titanium brace. Tears welled in her eyes, not for Jason, but for herself, for the part of her that still wished he had been the man she once believed in. Slowly she shook her head. "No, Jason, not anymore." Evelyn stepped forward, placing a signed restraining order paper in Jason's hands. "You have no right here. Leave before I call Detective Scott to escort you out." Jason's face twisted between rage and panic. He slammed the paper onto the floor and stormed out, his footsteps echoing down the hall. But as the door slammed, Nora Pike's voice called from the stairwell. Got it all on video. The world's going to see the real Jason Cole. She lifted her phone with a sly smile. Amelia wiped her tears, her body shaking. Chloe gently squeezed her shoulder, whispering, "You're stronger than his shadow." Just then, Evelyn's phone buzzed. Her eyes sharpened as she read the message. Audit scheduled, tomorrow. First breach incoming. Jason's lies were about to unravel, and the first crack in his empire would open wide under the weight of an audit he could never survive. The conference hall erupted in panic. One moment, Jason Cole stood tall on stage, flashing slides of soaring profits and shaking hands with investors. The next, stern-faced officers stormed in, flashing badges. Detective Brian Scott, calm but relentless, raised his voice above the chaos. "This is a financial crimes intervention. All records and ledgers are to be surrendered immediately. Step back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are seizing company assets." Gasps filled the room. Reporters lunged forward with cameras. Jason froze mid-sentence, sweat breaking across his brow. Sabrina Knox, elegant in emerald silk, slipped her hand from his arm and melted quietly toward the exit. Jason stammered, forcing a smile. "This must be some misunderstanding. My company is healthy, thriving. There's no cause for—" "Tell that to the judge," Detective Scott cut in, nodding to his team. They marched straight to Lewis Grant, the weary CFO, who stood trembling with a briefcase clutched to his chest. Lewis swallowed hard, eyes darting between Jason and the officers. Finally, with a shudder, he opened the case and handed over the files. "I can't cover for him anymore," he whispered. "The numbers are fake. The loans are patched with lies. I won't go down with him." The officers seized the documents, and in minutes, years of Jason's secret debts and falsified invoices were spread across the table. Paige Whitman, the forensic accountant, leaned in, her pen moving like a scalpel. "Vendor fraud, shell accounts, payments routed through Sabrina's network. This is textbook misappropriation." Jason lunged toward Lewis, his face twisted in rage. "You traitor! After everything I gave you—" Lewis shook his head. "You gave me nothing but ruin. Damien offered me safety. You offered me prison." The investors shouted, tearing up contracts. "Fraud! Lies! We'll sue!" Someone roared. Marion, sitting in the front row, clutched her pearls, her face draining of color. Across the city in Nora's apartment, Amelia watched the live news feed with Chloe and Felix. Her heart pounded as she saw Jason's empire begin to crumble. The man who had humiliated her at the gate now stood humiliated himself, his lies exposed to the world. Evelyn folded her arms, her expression cold and unshaken. "The walls are closing in, and this is just the beginning." Amelia touched her titanium brace, her fingers trembling, not with weakness, but with the weight of justice finally rising. "He thought throwing me away would free him, but it was the very act that trapped him." Back in the hall, Judge Rebecca Wallace's face appeared on the large screen, her voice crisp as she issued a ruling live. "Effective immediately, Jason Cole's accounts are frozen pending investigation." Jason staggered backward, stunned, and in the corner, unnoticed by most, Sabrina vanished out a side door, her phone pressed to her ear, calling Damien Wolfe. Sabrina's betrayal would soon explode in public, and Jason's fall from grace was far from over. The chandeliered ballroom was packed for Jason's reputation-saving gala. Cameras flashed, music soared, and Jason strode onto the stage with Sabrina on his arm, wearing a new designer gown. His voice thundered over the microphone. "Tonight, we put rumors to rest. My company is strong, my family is proud, and our future is secure." Applause thundered, but before it could swell, a ripple of chaos broke the air. A large screen behind him flickered, and suddenly files, charts, and red highlighted numbers appeared for all to see. Damien Wolfe's leak had been timed to perfection. Fake invoices, missing funds, and Sabrina's shell accounts exploded onto the wall like fireworks of shame. The audience gasped. Phones shot up. Reporters scrambled. Jason froze mid-sentence, his face draining of color. Then, like a viper striking, Gloria Daniels stepped forward, her voice sharp and dripping with venom. "Nice gown, Sabrina. Shame the diamonds are borrowed. Again. And shame your funding network is nothing but shells feeding Damien's empire." She held up her phone, the news already trending. Smile for the cameras, darling. You've been unmasked. Sabrina's composure cracked. Her hand slipped from Jason's arm, her face burning under the flashes. She stammered, but no words came. Jason turned in fury to his CFO. "Lewis, fix this! Tell them it's lies!" But Lewis Grant shook his head, his voice steady now. "No more lies. I've already flipped. I've given the auditors everything." The room erupted in jeers. Investors cursed. Former allies stormed out. Marion, humiliated, stood from her chair and shrieked, "You've ruined us all, Jason!" Reporters caught her every word as she slapped his arm before storming off, her face twisted in disgrace. Across the room, Jason's younger brother Peter Cole hesitated, guilt shadowing his face. He finally spoke, his voice breaking. "Jason, I can't cover for you anymore. I have the chats, the mistress errands, all of it. It's over." He pulled out his phone, showing the messages to a group of journalists. The walls of Jason's empire collapsed in real time. The crowd that once cheered him now jeered. Online streams caught every angle. Jason, once decisive husband, was now a public fraud, betrayed by the very people he had used. Meanwhile, in her small apartment, Amelia watched the coverage with Chloe, Felix, Nora, and Evelyn. For the first time, she didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She simply sat tall in her chair, her hand resting on her polished brace. "Justice doesn't always shout in court," she whispered. "Sometimes it shouts in the same halls where you were humiliated." Chloe grinned, eyes wide with pride. "The world is seeing the truth. The mask is off." On screen, Jason tried to grab the microphone, his voice cracking with desperation. "Please listen to me. It's not what it looks like." But before he could finish, a reporter shouted, "The judge is waiting for you, Mr. Cole." Cameras swarmed as officers closed in. Courtroom reckoning was next, and Jason's begging would arrive too late. The courtroom was a storm. Reporters shoved microphones forward, cameras clicked like gunfire, and guards pushed Jason Cole through the doors in handcuffs. His once proud navy suit was wrinkled, his tie loose, his eyes wild. The same man who had strutted on gala stages now stumbled like a criminal dragged into the light. "Order in the court!" Judge Rebecca Wallace's gavel slammed down. Silence rippled through the packed room. Jason was forced into his seat, his hands trembling as papers were laid before him. Every fraud, every shell account, every signature was there in black and white. "Mr. Cole," Judge Wallace said firmly, "you stand accused of falsifying records, defrauding investors, and attempting to exploit your disabled wife for financial gain. What do you have to say?" Jason's composure cracked. He stood, his voice breaking as he turned, not to the judge, not to the investors, but to the woman sitting calmly in her chair near the front, Amelia Cole. "Amelia," he cried, falling to his knees in the corridor space, "please, I was wrong. I see it now. You were my strength. I lost my way. Forgive me. If you could just speak for me, just tell them I'm not the monster they think." His voice cracked into sobs, desperation drowning his pride. Gasps swept the room. The man who had once called her dead weight was now on his knees, begging for her mercy. Amelia's chest tightened, memories flashing, the crash, the driveway, the laughter of Sabrina, Marion's clapping hands. She breathed slowly, pressing her palm against her titanium brace. Then she lifted her head, her voice steady. "You didn't lose your way, Jason. You chose it. You chose pride. You chose greed. And when I needed you most, you chose to throw me away." Her words cut through the room like steel. Jason wept openly, crawling closer, but Evelyn Hart stepped between them, her presence commanding. She raised a thick folder of restraining orders, trust papers, and sealed accounts. "This woman owes you nothing. The trust is sealed. The law is clear, and the court will not let your crocodile tears change the facts." Judge Wallace leaned forward, her voice crisp. "Mr. Cole, begging will not erase fraud. The evidence is overwhelming. Your accounts remain frozen, your access blocked, and this court will move forward to sentencing." The room erupted, reporters scribbling, cameras flashing. Marion Cole buried her face in her hands, shame dripping from her every movement. Peter, Jason's younger brother, sat pale in the gallery, knowing he had helped expose him. Amelia stayed calm, her dignity shining brighter than Jason's tears. For the first time in months, she was not the humiliated one. She was the woman who had survived. As the gavel slammed again, Detective Brian Scott moved forward, cuffs ready. "Jason Cole, you are under arrest pending sentencing." Jason's sobs echoed as guards pulled him up. And yet, in the back row of the courtroom, a single figure leaned forward with a faint smile. Damian Wolfe. The rival who had orchestrated much of Jason's downfall was not finished yet. But beyond Jason's arrest, something greater awaited. Amelia's moment of triumph. Not through revenge, but through the power of walking into her new life. The crowd roared as the doors opened. Flash bulbs blinded the steps of the courthouse. Reporters shouted Amelia's name, and the buzz was deafening. But then the noise fell into stunned silence. Amelia Cole appeared in the doorway, her titanium brace polished, gleaming like silver armor. Supported lightly by Ryan Matthews on one side and Felix Turner on the other, she steadied herself at the top of the steps. Then, gripping the rail with shaking hands, she began to walk. Measured, slow, deliberate. Each step thundered louder than Jason's empire ever had. The same woman once thrown out at a golden hour gate now walked back into the world on her own terms. Tears glistened in the eyes of strangers. The jeering neighbors who once mocked her now stood in awe. At the foot of the steps, Chloe Adams held a microphone, her young face bright with emotion. "Amelia, what do you want to say to the world watching you now?" Amelia paused, her breath trembling. She looked at the cameras, at the sea of faces, at the thousands watching online. Her voice was soft, but it carried like a bell. "I was thrown away when I was broken, humiliated when I needed love. But I learned something. Pain does not end a story. It begins a new one. This brace, once my shame, is now my crown. And with what I've been given, I will not build walls of revenge. I will build bridges of hope." Applause erupted. Tears streamed down cheeks. Amelia raised her chin higher. "Today, I pledge to use my fortune to fund adaptive technology, free therapy clinics, and rideshare vouchers for every survivor who feels trapped like I once did. This is not my victory alone. It is for everyone who has ever been cast aside." Behind her, Dr. Thomas Hayes nodded with pride. Ryan wiped his brow, whispering, "She did it." Felix's hand lingered at the chair he no longer needed to push, his eyes glowing with respect. Evelyn stood tall, her papers tucked away, her work done, Amelia's life secured. But in the corner of the crowd, Jason was there, shackled, flanked by officers, his face hollow. He dropped to his knees in tears. "Amelia, please, one last chance. Don't let them take me. I'll change. I'll be yours again." The crowd gasped, all eyes swinging back to her. Amelia's tears welled, but she did not waver. She stepped down the last stair, the polished brace catching the sunlight, and stood above him. "I forgive you, Jason," she whispered, her voice firm but kind. "But forgiveness does not mean return. My life is no longer yours to waste." The officers pulled him away as the crowd erupted in thunderous applause for Amelia's dignity. Jason's cries faded into silence, swallowed by flashing lights and steel bars. Amelia turned back to the cameras. "This is not the end. This is the beginning." As the applause roared, Amelia lifted her hand, engraved words glinting on her brace. "Strength born of scars." The screen faded to black, but her foundation's banner lit up across the city, signaling that her work was only just beginning. Because for every Amelia, there were countless others still waiting for their chance to rise.